My name is Jacob Stoops.
And I'm Jeff Luella.
And you're listening to the Page 2 podcast.
This is our podcast about the people of the SEO industry.
We chronicle the real-life stories, experiences, challenges, and advice from some of the most amazing people in the business. In this week's episode, we talk with Dawn Anderson, Managing Director at BERT, International Technical SEO Consultant and Speaker. We talk about how she went from owning a construction company to transitioning into web development, digital marketing, and then becoming a self-taught SEO. We talk about what it's like to go through the challenge of initially learning SEO when there are so many gray areas and opinions, how she learned from an information architect, her thoughts on traditional education as it relates to digital marketing preparedness, why she started her own company, and her passion for information retrieval and indexing, which has led her to get her master's in the field of computer science, AI, and machine learning. For our core topic, we discuss Google's BERT and how it incorporates natural language understanding, AI, machine learning, and just what, if anything, you can do to optimize for it. Spoiler, it's not that simple to optimize for. Finally, we answer Twitter questions of the week and award some more Page 2 podcast swag. So get your popcorn ready as we tell Dawn's SEO story and have another great roundtable discussion. Hey everybody, it is Jacob Stoops and we are back with episode number 74 of the Page 2 podcast. If you don't know me, I'm an SEO director at Search Discovery, and I am joined today by my trusty co-host and sidekick, Mr. Jeff Luella, Senior Technical SEO at The Wirecutter, a division of the New York Times.
Hey, howdy, hey everybody. How's it going?
I missed you, man. I missed you last week.
I know. I was too busy with my feet in the sand and a beer in the hand down in Florida, where coronavirus does not exist anymore. So
yes, it's been completely eradicated, or they just stopped caring.
Oh, they just stopped watching the news down there, I think.
Yeah.
It was chaos. I mean, luckily we hit it after. It was our spring break, but it was after the college spring break, so less chaos, more families. So it was a little bit better.
You kind of forced me to go back to my roots a little bit from season 1, where it was just I was by myself interviewing people, and quite honestly, we've done almost 50 episodes together. I've gotten used to having you as a co-host, and it felt really, really weird to go back to just being kind of by myself doing the interviewing. It was weird.
Yeah, no,
I'm not gonna lie.
If you weren't here, it would be really weird. So
it would be really weird. I almost wasn't today because of little preschool pick up and drop off duties. With my kids. I can't fortunately I can't just tell my daughter, hey, honey, I can't pick you up from preschool today. You're just gonna have to stay there because I've got a very important podcast to run. I don't think that's going to fly. going to fly. And for our guest, who we'll bring on in a second, she's been very gracious in terms of being flexible with her time as well. But let's actually, that's a good cue. Let's go ahead and bring our guest on today. So we are talking to none other than Dawn Anderson, Managing Director at BERT. Dawn, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to come on your podcast. I really appreciate the invitation. Not that I don't tend to go on very many of these anymore, so you dragged me out of my geek hole.
All right.
Yeah, we brought you out. We do feel honored. We've lured you out with promises of grandeur, I should say. Yeah. That's awesome. So before we get on the typical track of the episode, of course, we've got to go through a few things. So number one, if you haven't noticed, and I'm sure you probably haven't. We've got a YouTube channel. We would love for you to rate and subscribe, or not rate, subscribe and like the channel, like the videos. We are a little bit behind, I will say, with uploading probably the last 4 weeks of episodes since Daniel Chung's episode. We're just a little bit behind. We will get those uploaded. I know you all want to see our beautiful faces. So please go over to our channel and subscribe. It's just another good way to listen. If you like having YouTube on in the background, as opposed to listening to just the audio version, it's another way to listen. The other thing I would say is, of course, earlier this season, if you've been a listener, you'll know that we interviewed Hamlet Batista. Sadly, Hamlet has passed away. He was an amazing person. We are so lucky that we were able to talk with him, and kind of the circumstances of his passing were really, really unfortunate. And we've just been doing our best to try to promote his company, which is RankSense. So his company, obviously, there are still a lot of people that have been, working there and, wanting to make sure that the company remains viable and can see his vision through and take RankSense kind of into the next phase of their growth. But if you haven't heard of RankSense, let me just give you a quick breakdown of what it is. So if you've been in SEO for any length of time, especially on the agency side, you're going to know that probably the biggest problem is implementation. And it was really cool to be on some of the demos with Hamlet himself and just go through their tool, because as I'm describing all of my problems that I have on the agency side with frustrations of getting even sometimes the smallest changes implemented, he said, that's what we do. That's our business. That's what we do in a nutshell. Their goal is to solve your implementation problems, and the way that they do it is really amazing. It is something that's a little bit more advanced, but it's called Edge SEO. So they work with Cloudflare. I believe that they're also working to develop a relationship with Akamai CDNs that have servers all over the world. And what they're doing is they're using their technology to bolt kind of on top of your website and allow you to make changes to your website without having to get developers involved, right? Which can be a big problem because developers have huge roadmaps, lots of things that they're working on, and sometimes it's really tough to fit those SEO things into the developer roadmap or to justify, because SEO and the impact can sometimes be a little bit of a gray area, to justify them displacing their time working on something else to fit in your SEO thing. Well, the great thing about RankSense is that when you install their tool on your website, you can make changes to anything on your page. So things like page title, meta description, canonicals, you can inject content, you can inject schema. Pretty much, I don't know where the limits end, but there's a lot of things that you can do with updating your page. And it's as simple as, and this is what I find most fantastic about it, it's as simple as updating a Google Sheet. So who even thought of that? Like, that's amazing. So you can literally just go plug in a line of text in your Google Sheet, and then your page title gets updated or your meta description gets updated. And it's that simple, and it gets updated out on the cloud. And the even better thing that they do is they're collecting data about traffic coming into your website. And they're using some of their internal data visualizations and their tooling to show you the impact of the changes that you've made. So you make a change over here, and it shows you, hey, you're getting X amount of incremental traffic coming through to your website as a result of this change that you made. And then you, the SEO, can take that back to your developers and say, see, this thing worked. This is going to drive X amount of value. Can you now commit it to the regular code? So
yeah, it's a great way to run tests. Yeah. And
it's an excellent way to run tests. Yeah. And get things pushed through.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you want to familiarize yourself, they do much more than that. Simply go to ranksense.com. And then the other organization that we've been talking about a lot this season has been United Search, right? So we, when it comes to enabling a diverse set of voices within the industry, I think our industry for a long time has been behind. And our goal with this podcast, it's been something that when we started the podcast, it's been very near and dear to our hearts. It's been something that we had not really spoken up too much about, but you can see it in the diversity of our guests and the kind of balance of the guests that we bring on. We want to have multiple perspectives, and we want to hear from all sorts of walks of life when it comes to what it's like to be an SEO. And when it comes to the speaking circuit, when you're looking at speaker lineups, it hasn't always been that way. So United Search, their mission is to figure out how we can increase the diversity of public speaking lineups, get people from underrepresented backgrounds, the training and the mentorship that they need so that they can go and start speaking at some of these bigger conferences, so that these conferences can have better representation of the different voices within our industry, right? So, we've said a lot about it this season. I'm not going to belabor the point, but if you want to learn more, you can go to unitedsearch.org, and then on Twitter, it's search_United. Excellent. So, Dawn, you are now on the hot seat. So,
I feel like we need sound effects, like
yeah, maybe I can edit that. Maybe I haven't thought to edit a sound effect in, but maybe we can do that. But yeah, so I guess take us back to the beginning. Tell us your story. Where did you come from? Who are you? And then how did you eventually get into the SEO industry?
Yeah, so, you're going back nearly 14 years now, which I know that there are people who've been in SEO for forever. But yeah, so about 14 years ago, I was in a completely different industry, or prior to the 14 years ago, and for totally different, actually. So for over a decade, I had owned a construction company, building company. So totally different. And I had quite a lot of tradespeople that worked for me, and quite a lot of vans and not staff in the office, and, that kind of thing. And obviously, I'd had some real nightmares getting websites built for the business by various developers. They were really pretty dire back then. So I started tinkering around with things myself and got really interested in the internet, if you like. And then I started trying to market the website myself and watching lots of SEO things, reading books. Had a few experiences with so-called SEO agencies at the time, and didn't have any very good results. So again, trying to learn myself, tinkering, etc. And I really started to enjoy it, and I started to see some results. And so I actually found then, I went through a pretty horrific time just trying to get off the ground, because it's like anything, it's a bit frustrating when you don't know something at all. And you're just scrambling around looking for information all over the place. And obviously, we know that in SEO, there's quite a lot of cul-de-sacs you can go down when you're trying to learn things, and there's lots of different opinions, and some are great and some are not that great, and you can end up taking really bad paths.
And and sometimes you don't know what's great and not great at that time, right?
No, you don't, because it's not like maths where there's, this is the answer and this isn't the answer, or science or something like that, which is very black and white in terms of the truth to a large extent. SEO is very much, it depends. So I was hearing all these voices in terms of different opinions, etc. So very much trial and error. And thankfully, I came across a information architect who he just started working for himself as a consultant. And I think he was kind of just filling in his time between contracts, really working on massive websites. And I came across him just, I think, because he was just filling up his diary. And he offered to help me, to educate me, if you like, in information architecture more than SEO. And, you know, how different parts of a website have different importance levels. And to a slight extent, that it was almost teaching me the very essentials of computer science, very, very essentials of it. And so I started to implement a lot of the things that he was telling me, and I found that they started to work. He talked to me about the architecture of a site and so on and so forth. And then he started, as he was telling me, right, which direction should I go in, I asked, in terms of building this website. And he said, well, learn JavaScript, learn HTML, learn CSS, go to W3 Skills, and literally that's all you really need to get yourself off the ground. So, and thankfully, I was so pleased that I met him. And he kind of given me his time, if you like, because he charged me very, very little and really was more of an educator I kept in touch with for many years. And obviously then he went off working on huge websites again as an information architect, an enterprise architect, if you like. So I still had the building company at this stage. But I hope I'm not boring you here. I'm telling you.
No, not at all. That's great.
I'm telling you a lot of stuff here. So by that stage, I found that I was actually really, really enjoying the SEO and working on websites. And I was starting to learn PHP then and various other things. But it was all very, very spare time. But then I found that at the same time, the credit crunch, remember the 2009 when every market crashed, etc. And to be honest, the building industry just hit a massive brick wall. So I had to really start to think about changing direction. So, even though these things are awful at the time, you just think, well, things tend to sometimes work for the good, because I was forced to rethink my career. And I'd been really enjoying the SEO side of things anyway. So I started to think, well, actually, I'm going to go. And I actually went and started working for an agency in the UK. So, and that was really how I was really fully then getting into SEO. And then eventually I kind of started to work as a consultant. And then in 2012, again, things were changing in SEO. And I thought, right, well, even though I felt by then I started to learn quite a lot of stuff, that was 2005 years I'd been in SEO. I thought, right, well, I want to learn more about the whole digital marketing side of it, more, the wider, how everything fits together. So I started taking courses. I took the Google Squared, and then I took a postgrad in digital marketing. And then I went on and took a master's in digital marketing at the university. At the same time, I was still consulting, etc. And I've had the consulting business since 2012, and that's still here. That's BERT. And then I started still throughout consulting, and then I started lecturing on search and analytics at the university as well, and I still do that from time to time as an associate lecturer. And then I got interested in the actual really deep side of search, the information retrieval side of it, like how the search engines work, the web search side of it, really like
where the magic happens.
Under the hood, more and more, really. So so I'm really more and more intrigued by that side of things, but in conjunction with the marketing side of things, because obviously you have to have both. But so I'm really deep into that more and more now. And recently I started taking a second master's in computer science, machine learning, and natural language and artificial intelligence, just because I've watched so many videos on information retrieval, and I've got loads of books and I read loads of papers, but some of the terminology I was like, well, I really need to learn a lot of this stuff. So now I'm learning about things like data structures and algorithms and the running time of an algorithm and big O notation and Huffman coding trees. And it's really hard, actually, really. I was quite shocked at how challenging it is, so yeah. So that's a long story.
You went from building like houses to building the Matrix. So it's
there you go.
Yeah.
It's really
I mean, people say to me sometimes, well, why are you doing it? I was like, well, actually, I don't plan on not being a search consultant, but I just want to learn more and more and more about these new directions that search is going in, so I can bring that to some of the strategies and, just have as much forward vision as possible. And obviously we see now with a lot of the natural language, the BERTs and so forth, it's kind of where it's all headed. So for me to be able to read papers fully, I need to be able to understand them fully. So it's just adding more pieces of the jigsaw, if you like.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah, and not to bury the lead, but our core topic of the day, we are going to talk about Google's BERT and natural language processing. So if you want, not that we want to skip over Dawn's story, but if you want to fast forward to that, we're going to be talking about that here pretty soon, and we're going to dig into that. But before we get there, I think what's really interesting is we've noticed a couple of trends along the way. Number one, there are a lot of SEOs, Jeff and myself included, that started as self-taught, and it's really, really interesting. I hate to say it like this, but like being self-taught, you can't teach it. It's just you can't teach the level of curiosity, and it's something that when I run up against people, or when I meet people that are kind of newer to the space, it's easy to separate who I think is going to be an overachiever versus who is not by their level of curiosity to want to go out and learn new things. So that was for me the basis for starting my career. The other thing that is very, very clear as we've talked to more people is that the SEO industry has the economic crisis that happened in 2008, 2009. It has that to both thank and blame for many people who were in different places. And it's really common in the SEO industry to come from a completely different place and get into SEO by accident, right? SEOs get into SEO by accident, but it is such a common trend that it's almost like it's not an accident in a way. But I think that the financial crisis and the economic slowdown and collapse that happened was kind of the great turning point in a lot of people's careers, where they just had to like reassess and reevaluate, do I want to stick in this place where times are bad and maybe not getting better, and looking at new potential horizons, with search, especially at that time, being a relatively new career option. So a lot of people at that time, SEO careers were spawned out of that crisis.
Well, I think when I compare this profession with the previous industry, I used to get out of bed and think, oh my God, it's just going to be so much stress. And imagine all these, it was very stressful every morning. I was constantly, what's going to go wrong today type thing. So many people, employing people, loads of people, and constantly people just with challenge. I mean, I don't have an issue dealing with challenges, but it was just constant. And I wasn't excited when I got up in the morning to think about what I was going to learn that was new today. Because when you learn things as part of your job, I get quite a buzz out of that. It's amazing, never bored, there's never been a boring day in my life of being an SEO. It's super exciting constantly, and the sky really is the limit. I mean, it changes, obviously, directions change, and the focus very much now is moving towards, for me, a lot of AI and a lot of people getting into Python and quite a lot of technical aspects, much more technical emerging, if you like. But that excites me and it challenges me and it makes me think, I want to get up and do this every day. Yeah. But I agree with you on your point. I think you have to have that enthusiasm to really, just to make it in SEO, because I think a lot of people do come into it and then they don't have necessarily that excitement for it. And I think those stand out, those people.
And I think something I've realized over time is that and this is true in any profession, there are people that it's just a job and they're just there to punch a clock. And then there are people where it's truly a passion, right? Like if they weren't doing it as a job, they'd be doing it as on the side as the hobby. And I think that it's really, really challenging to teach somebody to have a passion. And it's a lot easier to work with somebody, when they have the passion and all you need to do is point them in the right direction and get out of the way, versus somebody where you have to really push them to go out and find information and want to take their knowledge into their own hands.
Yeah.
I think some of the best SEOs are they're just passionate people in general. And SEO just filled one of those passions, right? So I actually was doing construction before I did SEO a little bit, and
you look like a construction guy, Jeff.
Yeah, I still build things all the time, right? So, but it just happens to be like drones and stuff like that.
So then you know exactly what I mean by what's going to go wrong today.
Oh yeah. No, so I used to do roofing and put I actually was in communications. I worked before digital cable was out. We were an analog version, but it was off air. So we put up microwave antennas, and I was climbing on roofs and putting up antennas and patching roofs and fun things like that. And I really had this passion that I wanted to be a DJ. And, so I was DJing and I was like, well, how am I going to get my name out there? And there was this thing called the internet. And I started building my DJ website. And next thing I know, I am, an SEO, and it's just kind of built off of passion on passion. And the beautiful thing, I think, going that way and learning it yourself is I sometimes I feel I don't know anything, but then someone will ask me a question and it's just pops out and I'm like, I don't know how I know that. I might have read that and I might have done that, but I feel like doing it, you get a lot more, it just sticks back there in the back of your brain a lot more when you've actually built it. So
sometimes you know more than you think.
Exactly. Yeah. SEO by necessity is when, I started through necessity I need to do this, I need to get, this website somewhere, if you like. So, yeah. And it sounds like you had that as well. SEO by necessity.
Yeah. It was necessity. It was curiosity. And actually back then it was such a wild west too. Like when I started, it was 20 something years ago. And it was really, it was, by the Wild West was there were real audio was your real audio players, how you stream things. And, there was, use table coding and everything was the worst things you can do right now, but it was amazing back then. Flash, I was a Flash developer for a while.
Well, oh my God, yeah. That was probably not long lived.
No, but it was funny that I was on a team when I worked at Razorfish that helped build something called SOFA, which was search optimized Flash architecture. And it was show Google HTML, show your customers Flash, so it was kind of that first way of showing two different things, but it was a fun time to do things. And I wasn't the brains behind that project. I just got to, make the SEO part of that. So it was great.
Yeah. So speaking of brains, you've done a lot in the way of kind of a formal education. You're going back for your master's. One of the other common themes that we've run across on this podcast has been outside of people coming from other places, the people that intend to get into marketing, right? And they go to college for marketing. In other industries, my experience outside looking in has been that you're way more prepared to be a professional in the industry when you get out of college, right? And I use the dentist analogy, right? So when you go to school to be a dentist, you come out and you're a dentist. You're a dentist. You're an expert. When you go to school to be a digital marketer, you come out, and the experience that I've seen, now I didn't go to school. I skipped it and I got into my career by luck, and I was already deep into my career before I went back. So this is a different experience that I have. But from what I've seen outside looking in, is the people coming out of college are in no way prepared to operate at the capacity that you need to be able to operate from an experience standpoint when they get out and when they're kind of, day one. I don't know, like what has your experience been? You've done a lot in the way of schooling. Have you felt like the traditional educational experience is a good fit for digital marketers and SEOs as it's constructed now, or do you feel like there should be some adjustments?
Well, I think as you say, it's very difficult to teach somebody passion. Yeah. And I think that passion for the SEO and the internet and etc. is an absolute and utter 100% necessity. So I think if somebody is passionate about the internet, I'd rather take somebody who's like a bedroom coder and try and teach them SEO than somebody who's just not interested at all, but who has massive formal qualifications. But at the same time, I do believe that if somebody comes out of university as a graduate with a marketing degree or a journalism degree or something that is vocational in nature, like a digital marketing or PR or something that is relevant to our industry, they do have a great advantage, because I've taught those undergraduates and I know the level of education that they do get is a really great grounding for our space. So they'll be taught things like strategy, they'll be taught things like segmentation, they'll be taught things like CRM, audiences, different channels, that kind of thing. So that I think is a really good fit. Having said that, if somebody has a degree in modern history, I don't think that's wasted. I know a lot of people say, I never used my degree. That's not true, because you've learned to commit to a program of something, stick with deadlines, complete pieces of work, and doing any dissertation, whether it's your undergraduate, your master's, or, I've never done a PhD, and to be honest, I don't fancy doing one, because I'd rather do 2 masters than 6 years on a PhD. Yeah. I'll tell you. But the point is, I think there's a lot of things that college, we call them undergraduates, your version of college students, that 18 to 21-year-old range. I think there's a lot of things they do learn that help them and do give them an advantage, just with a mindset, finishing that 3 years of study, I think is something to take into any profession. So I do think it's useful, very useful.
That's actually a good perspective. So obviously I kind of led the question the other way, because I'm certainly biased, not saying that people shouldn't go to college, more or less that when you go to college for digital marketing, I wish people were more advanced when they came out and were fresh than they are, or I wish the curriculum was a little bit better. But I do come at it from a biased perspective, and I do think that because I was so bad at college at that kind of college age, that some of those things like committing and not procrastinating and getting stuff done and showing up for classes on time, that didn't come to me until a much later age. And I do think that can't be, that level of dependability can't and shouldn't be overlooked. And I overlook it when I ask that type of question, for sure.
Well, I completely agree with you, because I never took a first degree. I didn't do college at all until I was in my 40s, and then just did So I haven't got a first degree. I've got the postgrad and a master's, and I'm doing the second master's now. And that is the reason why I really appreciate that formal education now, because I went straight from school at 15 and was working at, 15 years old. So it gives me, I think,
appreciation.
I really appreciate, and I think I lacked a lot of that, that ability to really like stick with something for, even though I had the building company for years and years and years, it was more of a necessity that I was staying with that than anything else, whereas working in SEO is a passion. But I think when you can complete a course of several years, it's character building. And I think that is missing. It was missing in me, I believe. So I think, I think everybody should have the opportunity, and I think not enough people have the opportunity to get that education,
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
some don't take advantage of it. I probably had the opportunity, but I was quite a daft teenager and a bit wild, and it didn't, I didn't care at that time.
You didn't add that to when we were saying, hey, tell us how you got into SEO. You didn't tell us about the wild side,
Yeah, I was a bit, in my late teens and early 20s, I was a bit of a wild child, so.
Same here. Yeah, I like, when I've told my story, like I gloss over it, but I'm not gonna lie, I partied my way out of college, and there was a lot going into that, and it took me a long time to really appreciate what I had, because of my own faults, missed out on, and eventually I went back, and I do have a greater appreciation. And quite honestly, I look back on it now and I realize, had I not been such a screw up, I wouldn't be where I'm at now with a great job, because it took me screwing up and messing up to get to a place where I eventually found SEO.
The misfits of SEO.
Everything for a reason. I'm a great believer that everything is like part of the path that we're going to take, and I don't regret anything that I've learned along the way, and that's all. So
what made you decide to found your own company, BERT?
So I decided, I was working for agencies, and I just decided that I wanted to work on my own projects, my own websites, and for my own clients, if you like, or just for myself, if you like, some of my affiliate stuff as well. So so that was it. So I started, and that was back in 2012. And funnily enough, it was called the business Move It Marketing then. And because the reason I called it that was that I'd worked at agencies, and no disrespect to agencies, but I'd spent a lot of time being in meetings for the sake of being in meetings, and having a lot of conversations about things that were so small, but they took a long time for people to decide between so many people. So I just used to sit there thinking, oh my God, just move it. and then I decided to go on business Move It Marketing. But then several years later, I was like, God, I'm so sick of spelling this name out when I speak to people. So, and I just got my Pomeranian Bert. So I thought, right, I'm going to name the business Bertie. And then, ironically, literally complete coincidence, a year later, Google launched Google BERT. I mean, obviously, it was an academic paper.
Yeah.
So they didn't do it after my dog, for sure. But it was just pure coincidence that my business was called Bertie after my dog. And also, I'd read somewhere that actually a business should have really ideally something that was memorable, quick and easy, blah, blah, blah. So I just thought, right, I like the idea of having one name, a single name. And I looked on Companies House in the UK, because obviously we needed to register the business as a company, as an entity, if you like. I looked on domain registrars, domain names. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe Bertie is available. And So I thought, right, I'm having it. And but yeah, so it was just coincidence, that was all. Yeah.
Nice. It's funny because I always thought you named your dog in the business after the algorithm. So it was before. It was great.
Yeah.
You're a visionary.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, I don't think so. I think it's just one of those coincidences. Occasionally in life, I think you get something that's, just is aligned. Yeah.
I own too many domain names because I'll think of a name. I'm like, oh, this would be great for a company name. And it's only 6 letters,
Yeah. I stopped doing that now. Do you know what? Seriously, just this morning, 123 Red renewed something on me and I've stopped actually trying to stop them. I just think, I know that if I cancel it, I'm going to regret it. So I have so many domain names. So
yeah,
we all have them. I think it's Dean. Do you know Dean Crudis? Dean. He's I think he was going to build a website for domainaholics.
Domainaholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jake, and I bought 10 domains this morning.
Yeah, people tend to buy them when they've had a drink. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's me.
It's like online shopping for SEOs.
I wish it showed me the time at night that I bought domains because it has to be average after 2 a.m. Because when it's just like, I'm going to get this and then go to bed.
Yeah, exactly. And then you forget you've got it.
Exactly. Until like a year later when you get the bill.
Yeah, when it just slides past you, that renewal.
So I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Internship with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, but you guys just reminded me. I just so happened to watch it maybe a couple of nights ago. It's actually a really good movie about, two kind of old sales guys getting an internship at Google and kind of going back to square one and then working with a bunch of genius kids. Well, it just so happens that like in the middle of the movie, they took the kids all out for kind of a night on the town, and they're in San Francisco. I don't know, they just went to San Francisco. They're by the Golden Gate Bridge, and they're all like, recovering the next morning. They're watching the sun come up, and the one kid, he met a girl. He's really, really, really too drunk to be sending any texts, and he wants to send her an inappropriate text. And they're like, no, that's a horrible idea. Don't send that text. And they were at the time in this competition at Google to win jobs. And one of the points of the competition was to build an app. And that's how they got their idea for the app, an app that makes you have to solve a math problem before you can send a text. So maybe there needs to be that for buying domains, an app that makes you solve some really complicated problem before you can buy a domain after like midnight.
It's funny, that used to be a setting in Gmail. There was like a Gmail app for that I had set. And it always annoyed me because it would be in the middle of the day and I'd go to send an email and it would be like, you got to solve this problem first. So you can set the hours. And they weren't even that hard. It was, like 84 minus 23. And I'm just like, I can't think right now. I just want to send this email. So I disabled it.
That's a really good idea, though.
Yeah.
So before we move into our BERT and NLP conversation, Dawn, you've done a fair bit of public speaking. What has been your experience, becoming, starting your career and then getting to a place where you feel like you're knowledgeable enough. You're also a teacher. Teacher's probably a bad way of saying it, but you're a lecturer for the Manchester Metropolitan University, right? So you're used to being up in front of people teaching. How did you gain that sort of confidence, and what advice would you give for other people that are looking to get into that?
Okay, so one thing I would say is that nobody's ever 100% confident when they get out there and speak, at all. Seriously, it does get a bit easier, but then you can still have a bad gig. You know what I mean? It's like, or you feel like you're a bit back to square one, and in a way, it becomes more challenging. So I'm just telling you all the downsides. I'm not trying to put people off, because it's very rewarding in many ways as well. But what I would say is that speaking in public is not necessarily, it's not all gold tinged. That's the point. Yeah. So there is downsides to everything. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's really been nice to be asked. It can be quite stressful, I'll give you that, yeah. But at the same time, you know, you can almost feel like the more you go on with it, the more under pressure you are to produce something better than the last time. And, you know, I think the SEO community can be both really encouraging, but also quite a tough crowd. You know, I've seen feedback where people have said about somebody who's spoken at a conference, oh, I've seen all that before. And I think there is a little bit too much of that sometimes, where people who aren't necessarily getting up there speaking are a bit too critical of those that have spent a lot of time and put a lot of effort into preparing a deck, which maybe not everybody knows, if you like.
We eat our own young.
What's that? Yeah, I don't think it's quite as bad. I mean, I think things like United Search and the stuff that a Reach is doing as well. I think that the whole, like, a little bit of toxicity is starting to go in a new direction, a positive direction. And I think that there's definitely a need for that, because you're always going to get new people or just new people coming through into our industry. And we've just said it's really hard learning something that you just don't know and which there are no black and white rules for. So what I would say is that it's not easy being a speaker. Don't think it is. But at the same time, it does get easier. But then you are only as good as your last talk. It's a bit like being a footballer.
Yeah.
You're only as good as your last talk, because that's what people tend to remember. Sometimes you can put a huge amount of effort into a deck and nobody really sees it, so I've put like a week or 2 weeks into a deck, and then depending on the time that you share the deck of day, or if it's a Friday evening, 5 o'clock in the UK, you're not going to get as much visibility on it.
Yeah. So
be prepared to think of ways in which you can get the maximum return on investment, because it is an investment of your time. So I think if you're going to speak about something, think about whether it's worth the effort, because I think it's really easy to just say yes, yes, yes. And then you have to balance up whether it's worth your time and effort to do it, if you like. So I would say consider everything that you get offered. Try and come up with something different. Try and come up with a unique perspective. Go off, dig into papers, research something that nobody else is talking about. I think that tended to be the things that I got asked to speak about, things that not necessarily other people were digging into. Just try and bring a new perspective to the table. Yeah.
And then, of course, this podcast is all about the day-to-day grind, what it's like to be an SEO. And it's funny. I was on Morty Oberstein's SEO Rant podcast, and he caught me on a particularly not great day in my SEO career, where we go through this, where you're working with clients, and you're by proxy working with sometimes IT teams that you don't actually get to meet, and of course they're difficult. And he caught me on a rant on a day where I had just received the message from a client's IT team that basically said, like, they're just in it for the money. Of course, they're gonna skew their recommendations so that you keep them around. And it was like, it just set me off in a bad way, because I'm legitimately just trying to help a client not lose money, and they've got a lot of opportunities, and I'm just worried that they might be headed down that path, and I'm just literally trying to do anything I can to stop it. So I would ask you, what have been some of your more challenging experiences just being an SEO?
Well, yeah, exactly what you've just said, because, sometimes you will get pushback. And I've come to the realization that what you do is what I do now anyway. I make sure I gather as much evidence before I make the recommendation. So I send the evidence as well. So if I then get a pushback, it's not me that they are disputing. It's things that have been reported on videos from Google or in information retrieval papers, or they are known fact about web search, or so I make sure that they can't come back and me with anything really, you know. But yeah, exactly that. It's really frustrating, isn't it? It's like that.
Oh my God.
that is a challenge. And I think again, that's a good area that actually, it's great that Martin Splitt is now part of the Google Webmaster team, because he brings that more of a developer perspective to things and tries to bridge some gaps there. One of the biggest challenges I had was I spoke at BrightonSEO way back in 2013, 14, I think it was, yeah. And I had a talk, and it was a bit of a disaster. It went really not great. Might have been a bit later. So it put me off speaking for quite a few years, actually. And funnily enough, I was talking about ontology, web ontology, and what had happened is it was really fairly technical. It was very much about semantics, etc. And what had happened is the room next door was very much a content room, but that was full. So everybody from the content room ended up coming into my talk about ontology and whatnot. And so it didn't go down that well. It went down like a lead balloon. So that was quite a disaster. I think that was probably my biggest ever upset in SEO. And it put me off speaking for about 2 or 3 years, because it was just really upsetting. I was really upset. So that was my biggest challenge, I think. I should probably have said that on the last question. And I should have said, look, don't let it put you off if everybody's going to have a bad day. So
no,
in terms of the biggest actual challenge in SEO is when I've had websites which just end up over-indexing gazillions of millions of pages, and the client seems to think that it's going to get fixed overnight. But once you start to flood the search results with really like thin, poor quality pages, sometimes that can take, a year to fix. So, and it's quite, and obviously you're having to like manage the expectations of that client whilst you fix something which is not a 2-minute job, Yeah. I think that can be the challenge sometimes, like saying, look, SEO, unless you're going to do something that probably is, unless you're like massively high authority in the first place, so everything you do has almost like an immediate impact as long as it's technically sound. SEO really is very much about chipping away. And I think that can be a challenge sometimes when you have a client that has higher, you don't manage their expectations that well. Yeah. So think if you manage their expectations right from the start and overperform, then make promises that are not realistic, I think. Yeah, it's
interesting. I'm now that I work for the New York Times and Wirecutter, that I feel like if I went to a new site and tried to like build something from the ground up, like I'm kind of spoiled by having
authority. Yeah.
Just
do something. It's gonna if you do something, it's gonna be, you'll see the impact almost immediately.
No, when I first started, it was funny because we were running a test and someone was like, well, how long do you think it'll be? And I was like, probably like a month or a month and a half, we'll understand. And my the head of SEO at the time, she was like, no, you don't understand. This is the New York Times. We'll know in like a week. I'm like, exactly. And literally we would launch something and within 35, 40 minutes, it's if it's one of the big pages, right? If we're deep into the site, maybe not, but when we affect one of the category pages, it is almost instant, which is ridiculous.
Because of the importance of that page, and that's a really big area, the understanding importance, and it's important to a lot of people, that web page. So.
No, when I look at Botify and just look at the amount of times Google hits our homepage a day, it is more than some of the sites I've optimized in the past, in a month. So I mean, we're 20,000 times in a day, and it's just like, oh, come on, Google, but they want to know that news. So
exactly, and they need it to be like fresh. So, has it changed? Obsessed with whether it's changed or not,
Yeah.
So speaking of the Google, let's dig in for a little bit to Google BERT and natural language processing. And then, of course, we actually have 5 Twitter questions today to answer as well. So let's dig in on Google BERT for a little bit.
Yeah, so BERT stands for Bidirectional Encoder Representations from Transformers, and I had to look that up because I knew it meant something. It's interesting because when Google announced BERT, I really felt that it was over my head to an extent. I mean, it still is. I mean, it's not like Dawn, I know you're in school to learn all this too, right? So it's a really complex thing that I was just hoping that it would be simplified and I didn't have to really dive that deep into. But as I get more and more into learning Python and learning a little bit of that, it's like, wow, it's really, and I've never read the full BERT paper that was out there because I don't think I would understand half of it. and I consider myself a technical SEO, and I think this is more than, this is we are entering, and I made a joke about the Matrix before, and I did want to make a Matrix jokes where it's Neo was Mr. Anderson. I wanted to be like, Ms. Anderson. That's Google and BERT there, but it's what exactly? I know we can't get it in 5 minutes, but what exactly is BERT, and how does it affect on the SEO industry?
Right. Well, ultimately, the really simple way to kind of explain what BERT does is, say I say riverbank, or money bank. It's understanding from the words that surround bank whether the context of a page or a paragraph or whatever, or even more so now, bigger pieces than that potentially, understanding the context of a given word from the words that live with it. You shall know a word by the company it keeps. It's quite an old concept going back to the 1950s actually. Yeah. But computer scientists and natural language understanding researchers and library scientists, if you like, they've never really been able to crack it for computers, because computers have never been able to understand context. BERT is the biggest breakthrough for many years, because it was able to understand the riverbank by water, stream, grass, blah blah, etc., and financial bank by money, deposit, cash, blah blah, etc. So it's taking that and learning, applying that contextual understanding to larger and larger pieces of of an article or whatever, and a query, not just in the content but in the query as well. But the problem is, it's quite new, even though I saw somebody asked, what's the next big breakthrough in AI and natural language processing? And obviously I'm still very new to this myself, and I'm only learning, and having just started this master's in machine learning and AI, I realise how little I do know, because it's hard. But I've lost my track now. Where was I up to? Went off a little bit there. Take me back a bit.
Yeah, I mean, just getting into machine learning, and it's hard, and maybe even I'd like to understand how it's being integrated into the algorithm today and used.
That was it. That was it. Sorry.
It's okay.
Remember, I went off on one there. I do tend to go off on one. But actually, you triggered my brain to remember. Yeah. So, somebody asked a question, what's the next big, development in AI and machine learning, etc. And that is the biggest development for like decades. Yeah. So for me, nothing is as big as that, but developments on that, because things move slowly, generally speaking. I mean, they are accelerating a lot now, and you've got like, the whole GPT-2, GPT-3, articles being written by bots and so forth. Yeah, that's huge. And you've got all these different organizations, Bing and Alibaba's just built a massive machine learning model, but they are huge industrial size, billions of parameter type models, etc., that your average researcher can't really afford to like build. So it's kind of, there's not really a massive different breakthrough. It's just much of the same, but at bigger and bigger scales, more parameters, bigger this, bigger that, etc. But there is one big development that's come through, and that is passage ranking. Yeah, and that's come out of BERT. We've got the whole passage indexing thing with Google. Yeah. And Bing as well has been like utilizing that kind of thing for probably longer than Google. Yeah. But that's born out of the fact that there is, on BERT, there is a limit because it has this thing called quadratic dependency. Yeah. In that, say we have a sentence that is 8 words long. Because it has to understand the context of every word in the context of all the other words in the sentence. Yeah. It has to understand, river in the context of bank, in the context of every other word in between. Yeah. So it multiplies it. It's like squared, like 4 by 4, 8 by 8 by 8 by 8 by 8 by 8. So it's a massive amount of calculations to understand that word in the context of another 7 words. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has this issue. And then what happens is it gets to the point where after 512 characters, it becomes too expensive to compute it. It blows up, if you like. Yeah.
Right. That's for now.
Yeah, for now. Exactly. And that's a big thing. So there's these 2 particular researchers. I can't remember the first one's first name, but his surname is Rodriguez, and another guy called Jimmy Lin. And I believe they produced a paper that was about passage ranking. It comes from BERT, if you like, yeah. And ultimately, they said, look, they're IR researchers, natural language and machine learning and artificial intelligence researchers. And ultimately, they said, look, BERT has this issue. After 512 characters, it becomes too expensive to compute. So the natural thing is to break a piece of content up into passages, paragraphs, yeah. So all of a sudden, a piece of content which is big suddenly becomes small because it's all these pieces. And if you look then in something like a lot of IR researchers, natural language researchers, they have these leaderboards, and Google have entered these leaderboard as well. One of them is called MS Marco, and it's a leaderboard of question and answering data sets that is produced by Bing, Microsoft, yeah? Contributed for machine learning and AI and natural language processing researchers to practice on, to try and improve understanding of language, if you like, for machines. And they all try and beat each other against certain thresholds. So they have an actual section of that now called passage ranking. And the reason that's been born is it's been born largely out of BERT, but there's also 2 stages to ranking, or multiple stages to ranking in search anyway. Full ranking, which is like ranking the full results of a collection, if you like.
Yeah.
And passage ranking, which is ranking bits of it, yeah. Because what happens is, as I said, there's like various stages to ranking anyway. there's like the initial recall of everything that could ever be relevant. So if you have like the word Jeff in a piece of content, and you have like the initial stage, like the recall, everything with the word Jeff, gather it all together. But then the second stage has various other like, well, what's the most relevant from this pile? So this top pile of results will have like machine learning, and that will be like the second stage, if you like. So ultimately, passage ranking breaks down that second stage and like cuts it all into bits. Ranking passages is easier than ranking full results, if that makes sense. So passage ranking is probably, to answer that question, the biggest thing since BERT, really. But it includes BERT.
Right. It came out of BERT, right? So it's...
Came out of BERT, two things together. Like, yeah, I think passage ranking's been around longer, but then all of a sudden somebody went, hey, well, why don't we use BERT to rank passages?
And I guess, as like Moore's law says, every 18 months we'll get twice as fast and
Exactly
cheaper. That BERT will become full in effect. So no, that makes total sense. I didn't realize there was that limitation on BERT. So.
Yeah, there is. But that's only for now, because like you said, they're finding ways to move forward beyond that. There's this thing, and I really only know a little bit about it. It's called Deep CT, which seems to be like quite a big development as well. That is, I can't be sure that Google's using this, but the inventor is called, her surname is Dai, D-H-A-I, and she was a PhD researcher who invented Deep CT, and she works for Google now in the Google research team. So Deep CT ultimately adds, it literally replaces, God, I can't remember. I think it replaces TF-IDF actually. I know that there's this whole like discussion about whether Google uses TF-IDF. It is very well known to have been used just generally in web search. But in Deep CT, TF-IDF is kind of replaced by this Deep CT thing, which ultimately adds context into these paragraphs and passages, and utilizes this other aspect as well, which dynamically proves the index for passages that are irrelevant. So there's all kinds of things going on. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing, Deep CT.
That's great. I just typed it in my browser and found a GitHub on it. So
yeah.
So I've got to ask, as an SEO, when this first came out, similar to RankBrain as well, the question from clients tends to be, how do we optimize for this? And as an SEO, like, it's like, well, no, that's not exactly how this is working. It's not like you've got RankBrain or BERT optimization tips coming out of the box. This is going to affect you, and it isn't going to affect you at the same time, or at least that's my perspective.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the other side of things. It's on the understanding of queries and content. So it's really an improvement to how search engines understand better. Yeah. So, for instance, the passage indexing thing that came through. So actually, that helps. You see a lot of people who are bloggers, for instance, they don't know anything about SEO, or you see a lot of people who create this masterpiece of content and it's just a wall of text, no semantic headings to break it up, no context whatsoever. And it's a long, massive piece of content. And that is really hard to rank, just overall. So actually, breaking something like that up into pieces and utilizing perhaps something like BERT means that it's a kind of divide and conquer approach. So what they're doing is you break the problem up into bits. So actually, it's not something you can necessarily optimize for. It's just search got better. Search got more contextual, so.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And you were saying Alibaba has invested a bunch into that. I know they have AliExpress, which has a quadrillion products on it. And I'm guessing they're integrating are they like breaking it apart? Like Amazon has their own, servers and AWS and all that stuff. Is Alibaba doing that, or are they building it into the site to make like finding products easier?
I don't know enough about it. All I know, it will probably be on the commercial side. I think it will be on the transactional side of things. Yeah, I don't think it will be another offering. If you like, I think it's going to be like AWS or IBM Watson or anything. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of these huge e-commerce organizations now, they have massive IR research teams of their own. Amazon have an amazing research team, amazing actually. The woman that heads up their IR research team, I believe she used to be at one of the search engines. Munia Lalmas as well at Spotify, used to be at Yahoo Labs, and Matt used to be an IR lecturer at Glasgow University. So these are amazing teams, and they're really deep into the research into how people search and how to understand queries and content. And music, music information retrieval is a really big area, and obviously Spotify are doing, because that's a search engine.
Yeah.
I know people don't think of like Netflix and Spotify and and all of those things as search engines, but anything that has a search box is a search engine. A website is a search engine.
So the interesting thing, and we've talked about this a little bit before, passage indexing, Fraggles, I believe as Cindy Crum once coined them. That goes back all the way to season 1. But I think within the next 10 years, maybe even 5, when it comes to an information retrieval sort of system, and when it comes to being able to index all of the content on the web, I would not be surprised to see podcast and audio content start being pulled into the rankings. So like instead of just web pages and blogs, I would love to see search engines move into pulling snippets of audio text, from an episode like this, very much like this. I would, tend to believe that as we get better at translating the words and voice search and those sorts of things. And I know voice search was supposed to be like the next big thing too. But I would have to imagine that they would start to merge all of these systems together so that it's not just HTML web pages, and it's looking at audio as well, because everybody's got a podcast these days, right? It is a medium that is just blown up in probably the last 4 to 5 years, and even more recently. So I think that's the next horizon, in my opinion.
Well, you just touch on the whole do you remember years ago when people were saying this is the year of mobile first, this is the year of mobile first, and every year would pass and be like, oh, next year, then conversational search for me will be, I don't think it will ever be like that, but it will be quite near to that, because there will always be a place for desktop and actually looking on your mobile without speaking. But more and more people are getting like Google Homes. For me, I've got 4 in my house and it's rubbish. I love it. I use it mostly for playing music. I ask it questions. Yeah. Sometimes it tries to tell me a joke without me even asking. Sometimes I'm surprised actually she's not just chipped in, but I think we've unplugged her before this. I tend to jump in whenever I mention the G word, especially when I'm on client calls. So, but the point is, it's going to get much, much better, because there's a lot of work going on in that space, huge amount of work. It has to be treated differently, and there is this notion of you have to really understand the user the user of the device really, really well. Yeah, and I think that will go much more and more in the direction of becoming a recommender system, and there will definitely be. Well, there's a lot of stuff going into the space around what they call clarifying questions. So what's that? Because obviously a voice device is only really going to give, you don't have the 10 blue links and the query search result diversification so people can just pick from 10. You have like 1, maybe 2 or 3 choices. But the clarifying questions is when you may ask your Google page, what are the, give me the names of 3 restaurants in X area. They might then come back with a question such as, what cuisine would you like? Would you like French? Would you like English? Would you like Italian? Would you like Indian? So then you've limited down the available results massively just by saying, oh, I'd like French restaurant, please. Immediately, you've made it more precise. So that kind of thing will kick in. I believe it'll be very much question and answer until, it's like, that game, Who Is It? Who Am I? Where it's just a process of elimination, really.
Guess who? Yeah.
I think that it won't be all that, but I think that there will be an aspect of, and there's a really great researcher called Mohammed, I can never pronounce his surname, Ajapazani. I'll share his Twitter profile afterwards or whenever you go live with this, because he's amazing. He's an amazing researcher. He's doing a lot of stuff on clarifying questions in conversational search, and he's a researcher at the University of Amsterdam in mobile and conversational search. Yeah.
So before we jump into Twitter questions, any closing thoughts on BERT, natural language processing? I guess I would ask specifically from the perspective of like, what do SEOs do about it?
I think we have to I think we need to just be increasingly aware that it exists. I think that's half the battle. Be aware that these changes are always on the go. Be aware, for instance, that a huge amount of queries are entity-driven now. Be aware that the likes of BERT, natural language understanding, fills in the gaps between, entities and structured data, etc. Is a way for all the glue, the contextual glue. So build that understanding, if you like, into the strategies that you take. Utilize things like semantic clues, etc. Be consistent. I think it's really easy for search engines almost to go in the wrong direction if you mash up the sections of your site too well, especially when they're big wordy sections. I think being consistent in the way that you compartmentalize a website is a big thing. I think probably more so now search engines are trying to understand natural language. Keep concentrating on things like schema and structured data, because that is that little bit more stronger than natural language, if you like. And just keep learning. Just keep learning all the time, as much as you can. That's I think it's just really a key thing to be doing. Don't ever think that, you've got a strategy and it works, because no, you haven't. Just, it's always going to change.
Yeah, that's been true in my experience. It's a lot different today than it was when I started. So let's dig into Twitter questions of the week. Just a reminder, if you are the winner, we would love it. It's not required, but we would love it if when you get your swag, you snap a picture and tag us on Twitter. Awesome. All right. So our first question comes from Juan Gonzalez Villa at SEO Strategia on Twitter. So in your opinion, how big of an impact has BERT had on Google search? Do we know what percentage of queries are currently affected by BERT?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, virtually every English query now is impacted by BERT as of last November. Initially it was 10%. You need to clarify that. But initially it was 10% of English queries and all of featured snippets where they existed. But then obviously the huge amount of internationalization happened with the featured snippets. for a start. But I believe every English query is impacted now by BERT as of last November. Yeah.
And let me clarify, is that English US or English everywhere?
I think it might be still English US.
Okay.
But Barry Schwartz is probably better to clarify that exactly than me. He's right on it. But I think it's a lot. It's a lot now, and Bing even more so, because Bing actually use something called BERT-like, something BERT-like. So they've built something that's based on BERT, if you like, but at scale. I think it has a massive impact on just search generally. There's a lot more intent detection through contextual understanding on both queries and content. It's not going to always be perfect, but it is self-learning, because they use this whole transfer learning approach is probably where it just feeds forward. All the learning just keep learning. It's machine learning, So yeah, so I think it does have an impact, and increasingly so. Big impact.
So question number 2 from Richie Lauridsen at Richie Snippets. Love that handle on Twitter. So my question for Dawn, I remember you tweeting a bit about studying information retrieval in greater detail. Is there a textbook or source you'd recommend for SEOs?
Yeah, but what I would say is don't expect it to be there's always going to be some thick, dense reading in these materials. Yeah. So don't expect it to be like a really straightforward blog post, yeah. So be prepared to just, even if you have to go through things and not fully gather the concepts at first, and then go back over them. Modern Information Retrieval by Ricardo Biesi-Yates is the go-to textbook, and I believe it's worth investing some time in reading it, yeah. But there's also loads of materials. There's Stanford have a published textbook, if you like, a published course. There's some brilliant lectures by the University of Freiburg, Hannah Bass, which I'm happy to share. Again, I'll send you these, and you can perhaps publish them on your page when you share the podcast. They're brilliant. She has 18 lectures. If you're a visual learner, again, don't stress too much if you can't, you don't understand the huge amount of the math side of it, because I don't, and I'm trying to learn, and it's not easy. But the concepts are worth knowing, just in terms of things because it impacts every part of search. Things like priority queues and compression and web caching. This is all part of web search, and not necessarily just rankings. It's about the way that search engines are built. So, yeah, Modern Information Retrieval textbook, and the videos I would suggest by Hannah Bast. And there's loads of free stuff as well. Entity-oriented search by Christian Bellog, brilliant as well. Mobile Information Retrieval, mobile search by Fabio Cristani and Mohammed, who I was telling you about. Again, loads and loads of books.
So question number 3 from Jose Luis Hernando, JL Hernando on Twitter. So this is actually a 2-part question. So beyond BERT, what is the latest big breakthrough or idea that you've come across in informational retrieval research and think will have a big impact on commercial search engines and search in general? And what areas do you think SEOs don't spend enough time talking about or researching about?
Okay, so I mentioned about the passage ranking, yeah, that's massive. So I've already covered that, really. And I think the deep CT thing is starting to be a big area, and I think potentially, actually, I need to dig into this more and understand whether it has the potential to be used commercially, because they asked about the commercial question. This whole notion of being able to boil search results down so that they don't have to have as many retrieval stages. That I talked about the 2-stage ranking and the multi-stage ranking. I remember reading the paper by Dye, and it said, this has the potential to like totally change the face of commercial search, so that actually instead of having this really rubbish relevance recall in the first stages, we just make the whole thing better. So that has the potential to be massive. But there's all sorts of things going on, huge amounts of things across many areas.
Yep.
Query understanding, ranking, caching, performance, crawling. You know, they have like huge amounts of conferences actually.
And it's only growing. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many, like you said earlier, kind of like rabbit holes that you can go down from an SEO perspective, and all of them are being pushed forward and advanced upon in some way, shape, or form. It's really hard to keep up.
It's the same in that field as well. It's like there's so many things happening.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing. Just the whole black box algorithm thing is the biggest thing for like decades. But
yeah, it's
more of the same.
It's why when somebody describes me as an expert or a guru, and my work colleagues are guilty of that, I cringe a little bit inside because I'm like, maybe I know 1% of what's going on, and I've been doing this for 15 years. So
exactly. And you know, I feel exactly the same. I'm like, oh my God. I really, when you start to learn something new, you realize how little you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
yeah. So question number 4 comes from Rev7. This is actually the first time, and this is going to be 2 questions in a row that we've had a question from an agency. So like, not that I want to disqualify them from winning. I'm glad that y'all submitted a question, but I don't know I can't send the entire agency swag, so I don't know exactly who to send it to, but it's awesome that agencies have chipped in with the questions. We're excited. So
we can send them a banner. We can send them a banner to hang up in their agency.
Well, there you go. We could do that.
H2 banners.
Jeff can print that out with his 3D printer.
Yeah.
So at Rev7 Agency on Twitter, what, if anything, causes Google to lose significant market share?
Well, I think ultimately not delighting search users. That's it. You know, that's why they are obsessed with trying to make sure the search results are, you know, as diverse and meet as many informational needs as possible, because if people don't find what they want, they are eventually going to start going elsewhere, and it's as simple as that. So yeah, I mean, there are also the whole like privacy things as well, so I don't know, maybe people will start to think, well, I'm going to go over to whatever DuckDuckGo. So I don't know, maybe privacy, maybe just not being in enough types of spaces. Maybe people will start using search more and more whilst they're on Facebook or whatever. Many things. And I imagine they'll have many researchers and benchmarkers looking at the changing market and making sure that they are everywhere, ubiquitous.
Yeah.
My bet, honestly, if I had to answer this very honestly, it would be one of 2 things. Antitrust lawyers, when they become or are classified as a monopoly and are forced to break up, or if Amazon ever decides to turn their attention, because Amazon is kind of the other big behemoth in the world that's just taking everything over.
Yeah.
But,
Apple's making a search engine too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, they have got, but at the same time, Google's trying to go the other way into their space. So with the like, with, you know, shopping feeds becoming organic again and product images more. So I think it kind of cuts both ways. I think Amazon probably would do a great job, but I think I know for sure that whilst they've got an amazing team, search even for them is not an unsolved problem on their e-commerce side of things. So it's I think people expect search to be perfect, and it is far from solved. That's what makes it so exciting for not just us as SEOs, but search engines as researchers and organizations, and humans are weird. You know what I mean? Like,
understatement of the entire episode.
Humans are like, what did you mean? But I mean, what did a human mean? being mean by just one word. What do they mean by, dresses? Do they want to buy a dress? Do they want to look at dresses? Yeah. Do they have a particular event in mind, or do they presume the search engine knows,
Yeah.
So humans are hard to work out.
Google might know more than us. So
it probably does. Scary. Last question. Blue Space Copy at Blue Space Copy on Twitter. At what point does optimization become over-optimization? Is it measurable? Is it even possible? If so, what tools, techniques, and or signs do you use to identify it when it happens?
Yeah, for me, 1000%. I have seen many, many category pages that just will not rank, however hard the client tries, and they are outranked by their product pages, blah, 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 and they just try too hard. So I think if you try too hard, it's like, you'll get a client that may say, oh, I need to put more keywords in that page. No. It's like, no, you don't need to put more keywords in. No. You can go too far. And I think one of the biggest reasons people don't do well is because they try too hard, at SEO. And the page just screams SEO. I think SEO, it can be subtle, it can be tasteful, and it can be, if you do genuinely put the user's informational needs first and foremost at the center of the strategy, what are they looking to do? What's the job they're looking to achieve? And then think, well, I need to express that this information is on that page for the search engine, yeah? And I need to probably mention the word once or twice, and I need to show that, this is a video page, or I need to make sure they can see the content. I can make sure it's crawlable, etc. And I make sure all the signals point to that. So there's no dilution or confusion when it comes to probability determination.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, it's 100% really very easy to over optimize and just try too hard, because nobody likes anybody that tries too hard. It's like, search engines are the same.
Yeah. So Dawn, you have to pick a winner out of those 5 questions. Yeah. Which one is the best question?
I'll just recap. We've got Juan with BERT. We've got Richie with the information retrieval. We've got Jose with the beyond BERT, kind of what's the biggest breakthrough. We've got Rev7 with Google market share, and we've got Blue Space with over optimization.
The question about where can I go and learn more about information retrieval, because that for me is the one thing, it's not talked about enough in SEO. Yep. It's shied away from a little bit. I'm no expert. I'm learning. I'm in kindergarten, as you would say, with it. Yeah. And I don't intend to be an information retrieval researcher. I intend to be can bring it to my consulting, if you like. Yeah. But I want to learn more, and I believe that's the area people should be going in.
Yeah.
So Richie Snippets. God, I love that name. I wish I would have come up with a better Twitter handle when I had the chance. But Richie Snippets, Richie, we're going to be reaching out to you. You're going to be able to pick your swag. You can you can have a T-shirt, a coaster, potentially a hoodie, a mask. Of course, if you want a sticker, whatever. We've got a bunch of different merch, so we'll be reaching out to you through Twitter to hook you up. Jeff, you want to take us home to the end of the episode?
So, Dawn, we ask all our guests this one final question, and is, what words of advice would you give a person just getting into SEO?
Read widely. Don't ever follow particular, sounds awful this, but don't go down the hero worship of the SEO rock star. I don't mean that awfully, because I think it's important to take many views, many views, look across the whole range and look for common themes, and then try also bring in reading a lot of Google research stuff, a lot of the technical SEO section in Google developers. So read widely, think with Google for the marketing, that side of thing. Attend as many webinars as you can, online. Listen to podcasts like this.
Yes.
please listen to podcasts.
Yes. And like and subscribe. Just kidding.
Like and subscribe. So Dawn, that's a great answer. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing your background. Where can people find you?
Mostly on Twitter, to be honest. Although I am on there a bit less than I used to be. But Donny Ando on Twitter. I do check it every day, multiple times. Yes, just at Donny Ando on Twitter. And you can find me, obviously, if you did want to reach out through my bertie.com website. Less so on LinkedIn, but you can send me a message there if you need to. I think it's Ms. Dawn Anderson over there. And that's it, really. Those are the best ways to get hold of me, yeah. But Twitter's probably best, yeah.
Awesome. So for everybody out there, as you know, Dawn, this is your Friday night. We really, really appreciate you hanging on with us over in the UK to talk with us and talk a little bit of shop. For everybody else, we turn our editing around really quickly, so you've probably got a full week ahead of you. So we'll just say, have a good week. We have one episode left in season 3. It's going to be a good one. We're talking to Azim Ahmad. You know him as Azim Digital, and Jeff and I are then going to ride off into the sunset, and we're going to enjoy our summer, and we'll be back for season 4. But if you've listened this far, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. And look out for one more episode this season.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Page 2 podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the show or listen to new episodes, visit us at page2podcast.fm. That's page, the number 2, podcast.fm. Our episodes are also available on a number of other platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Breaker, Deezer, Overcast, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. Additionally, you can also listen and watch our show on our YouTube channel or follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. If you'd like to get in touch with us, contact us at thepage2podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, happy optimizing.